Welcome to the Alivinci podcast story, Auto Edition. I'm Bella, your guide into the forgotten, the forbidden, and the frighteningly truth. These are not myth, not fiction. Every exorcism, possession, and unexplained encounter you hear is real. These stories have been unheard of for many centuries. Church records and first-hand confessions by people all researched, reassembled, and reawakened just for you. This podcast is brought to you by Alivinci Crystal Land, where energy speaks louder than fear. And every episode is approved by Mr. Shelby, founder of Alivinci University, whose mission is to protect, reveal, and elevate the truth, even when it screams. For a deeper insight and spiritual alignment, follow us on Instagram at alivinci.crystal.land and subscribe on YouTube at Alivinci Crystal Land. Now take a moment and lean in, because the truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits in the darkest parts of silence. Hello everybody. Today we're going to be diving into a true exorcism story. The story takes place today in Germany in 1970s in a small rural village called Kingerlenberg, surrounded by misty forests and Gothic cathedrals. There lived a girl named Anneliese Michel. She was just 16 when it all started. A devoted Catholic, smart, shy, very kind lady. She played the piano. She volunteered at the church. She wanted to be a teacher, but one day, in the middle of class, her body stiffened. She couldn't move. Her hands started to clench. Her jaws locked, and her classmates screamed. Doctors then diagnosed her with epilepsy. They gave her multiple medication, but the seizures kept coming, and then the voices started. She began hearing whispers, saying cruel things, filthy, blaspheming things she wouldn't repeat, things she swore weren't her own thoughts. She began seeing faces, demonic, twisted, grinning faces that stared from every corner of her room. She refused to eat. She said demons were inside her stomach. Her weight dropped and her eyes sunk. She told her parents, "I'm damned. I'm in hell." Her parents, deeply religious, begged the doctors for help, but the medications didn't work. She got worse. Then she said the names of Judas, Hitler, Nero, Cain, and Lucifer. She said they were inside her head. Her behavior grew violent. She'd tear her clothes apart. She would growl like an animal. She bit through holes through the walls. She urinated on the floor and licked it up. She tore the head off of a dead bird and ate it. She spoke in multiple voices. At night, the house shook with screams. Eventually, the church and the priests agreed to approve an exorcism. It was beyond medicine at this point. It would become the most intense and controversial in modern history. Over 10 months, two priests, Father Ernest Alt and Father Arnold Rez, performed 67 separate exorcisms. Each session lasted hours, and every moment was documented. They recorded over 42 hours of footage of audio to show the public this was an exorcism for proof. In the tapes, Anneliese's voice doesn't sound human at all. At one point, 6 distant voices would argue and growl over each other, each claiming to be a different entity: Judas, Hitler, Nero, and Cain, Lucifer, and one unidentified spirit. The voices interrupted each other, insulting and mocking the priest, some weeping, some angrily talking. It's not just unsettling, it's impossible to explain. She spoke Latin so fluently, quoting things from the scripture, cited theological doctrine. She had never studied any of this before. Her strength became inhuman. She wrestled down her own father, a grown man despite weighing under 90 pounds. She was burning hundreds of calories a day, just thrashing in bed, fighting off people and still refusing not to eat. She said that the demons that were in her head wouldn't let her eat. Her face changed. Eyewitnesses described it as shape-shifting. Her bones looked different, her cheeks sunken, her eyes black. Photographs from the end of her life are still very haunting. She didn't look like a teenager anymore. She looked ancient. She was often found on her knees, mumbling prayers, smashing her head into the wall. She said she was praying for the sins of the world, sins that she had claimed herself. In one session, she claimed she had been visited by the very Virgin Mary herself and given a choice to be freed or continuing suffering from others. She chooses the suffering. Her parents kept diaries. They described the house as always cold air that felt very heavy. Religious objects would start to disappear, crosses flipped upside down, Bibles shredded. Neighbors heard things too. Screams, growls, furniture crashing, you name it. But no one ever saw anything, but only heard. By the 9th month, her body was collapsing. Her knees were so damaged from kneeling that they had started to shatter. Yet she kept kneeling 100 times a day. Per hour, per minute, her teeth were broken from clenching, her lips torn from biting herself. Her last words were whispering, "Mother, stay with me. I'm afraid." She died the next morning on July 1st of 1976, weighing at 68 pounds. The official cause was malnutrition and dehydration. For the church, it wasn't the end. The story became a national scandal. The priest and her parents were charged with neglecting their daughter. The courtroom ruled it as homicide, and the courtroom was packed with journalists, doctors, skeptics, priests. Then they played the tapes. A hush fell over the room. No one dared to speak. No one had heard anything like it before. The defense argued with this. It's a spiritual war, not a crime. The prosecution said it was abuse to the child. The church stayed silent about this matter. In the end, the parents and priests were convicted, but received light sentences. The judge ruled on behalf and the bizarre case, unexplainable nature of this case. But the public was split. Some were torn between spiritual warfare, and some people were torn that it was a heinous crime of neglect of the child. Some said it was a clear case of untreated mental illness. Doctors claim it could be bipolar. Others said it was the proof of the devil walking amongst us. Today, Annelise's grave is considered a pilgrimage site. People come from all around the world to pray, to leave flowers. Some claim to have visions of Annalise. Others say they still hear screams or can see presence of her. But the most disturbing part, Annalise predicted her own death. She told her family she would die to show the world that possession was a real thing. She said, people think I'm crazy, but one day they'll know. And nearly 50 years later, we still don't know what happened in that house. But the faces, the voices, the tapes, that is proof. The physical transformation of her body, that's not psychosis. That's something else. Something much darker than what we can comprehend. And if it happened once, why can't it happen again? For our next story, it takes place in 1949, a quiet little town called Cottage City, Maryland. This kind of place where the scariest things might just happen, whether it be a schoolyard rumor or the neighbor's grumpy dog. It was peaceful Saturday night, quiet church bells on a Sunday, ice cream trucks in the summer. The kind of place where people didn't lock their doors. But that year, that town became the epic center of something that would define explanation. And terrifyingly enough, anyone who came near it would be scared. It all started with a boy named Robbie Mannon. Robbie was just 13, small for his age, bright, polite, observant, but quiet at times. His parents were conservatives who believed in order, structure, and faith. Robbie wasn't rebellious or a troublemaker. He wasn't interested in sports like most boys were, or rough housing. He loved books. On his time off, he usually would read books alone, or at times he'll just go to the library. And above it all, his favorite auntie, Aunt Harriet. Auntie Harriet wasn't like his parents. She was eccentric, mysterious. She practiced spiritualism. She even practiced using pendulums, even the Ouija board. Robbie loved visiting Auntie Harriet. She told him stories about the unseen world, the spirits all around us. She showed him how to use the board to reach to the other side. But then Harriet got very sick. She then passed away, and Robbie was completely devastated. His parents tried comforting him, but they couldn't replace her. So, on his own time, he did what Auntie Harriet had taught him. He opened the Ouija board and asked to speak to her on the other side. Without Robbie knowing any of the secrets to Auntie Harriet's spiritualism, he didn't realize that the board was evil. That was the night the scratching started. At first, it was just very faint, light and subtle scratches on the walls, like rats in the walls. But then it grew louder and louder, and the sound of claws digging across the woods. Then footsteps in the hallway. And once in a while, Robbie would wake up to unknown scratches on his body. But every time they opened the door, no one was there when he went to go check for these noises. Furniture began moving randomly. Chairs scraped across the floor. A vase fell to the ground of Robbie's very eyes. The lights would flicker. Then came the nights when Robbie would have to sleep alone. The bed would shake violently as if someone were underneath or someone shaking the bed beside him. It's pounding against the mattress. The family became so terrified that doctors had to come in, psychiatrists had to come in. They ran blood tests on Robbie, even brain scans. They gave Robbie sedatives, but nothing was working. He remained calm 1 minute, and then the next he would be thrown from his bed like a rag doll. His personality started to shift. He became cold. He grew detached. He would always mumble to himself, and at times he would go catatrophic, started staring at the walls for hours, then snapped and throw a tantrum of the inhuman range. The tipping point came to one night when his mother found Robbie in the kitchen, shirtless, with the word hell carved into his stomach. It wasn't bleeding, but it looked fresh, like the skin had split from within. His mother was so worried. Did Robbie take his nails and dig himself or scratch himself, causing the word hell? She wasn't sure. The next day, a family friend from the minister came to visit. He sat down with Robbie, who was silenced. Then Robbie screamed. He arced backward like he was being pulled by a hook. His eyes rolled back into his head, and then he began speaking Latin, not words, sentences, full-out sentences. Robbie had never studied Latin. His school didn't even offer it. His parents didn't even know it, but he spoke so fluently. The minister froze in fear. His eyes widened. He backed away. I can't help with this, he said. They turned to the Catholic Church. They were referred to the Father William Bowderm, a seasonal Jewish priest from St. Louis. He was skeptical until he met Robbie. Alongside Father Raymond Bishop, they moved the boy to Alexander Brothers Hospital in St. Louis. And that's when the nightmare began. For 29 nights, they performed the rite of exorcism according to sworn documentation from both priests. Here's what they had witnessed. Robbie's voice would change instantly. Deep, not human, grunting sounds. He would curse, scream, blaspheming in Latin, Greek, and Armenian. Religious artifacts would fly across the room. When holy water was touched his skin, it would boil into bubbles. Robbie would scream. Bibles placed near him would be torn apart by invisible forces. And then came the carvings once again. Words like hell, evil, trapped, and the Roman numeral X3 appeared on his chest and arms, raised like welts as though something was writing from the inside out. Robbie would scream violently at sacred items such as the cross. If a priest entered with a crucifix hidden under his clothes, Robbie would point to it and hiss. One night, Robbie looked at the father bishop and said in a cold, monotone voice, "Your brother sins in silence." Father Bishop froze. That was true. No one knew that. No one except the voice now speaking through Robbie. Another night, Robbie began convulsing violently. The nurses rushed in only to see him raise several inches off the bed, not once, but 3 times. Father Bowden, during one particular violent session, was hit in the face by what he describes as an invisible force. His nose broke instantly. Witnesses said it looked like a hand had struck him in the face. One they couldn't even see. By the 3rd week, exhaustion had set in. The priests were physically and emotionally drained, but they returned every night praying, chanting, condemning, and the spirit grew bolder. It mocked them. "You'll never have him," it growled. "I was here before you were born." It claimed to be many things, a lost soul, a demon, even Lucifer himself. Then he came to the final night. It was a early April spring, chilling, cold April day. But that night inside the hospital room, it was freezing. The windows had frost over them. One of the nurses claimed her breath turned visible like winter air every time she would enter Robbie's room. She would do her task quickly and leave Robbie by himself. Robbie was screaming, thrashing his body, his back bending at angles that should have broken his spine. Father Bowden raised this crucifix. "I hear you by Christ the Savior. Leave this child." The lights started to flicker. Robbie let out a scream that shocked the entire hospital hallway. Then silence. He collapsed, limp. Minutes passed by. Then his eyes fluttered open. He looked around, confused. "What just happened?" he whispered. The priest stared back. Robbie, he was back. Robbie had no memory or recollection of the exorcism. He was calm, gentle, polite. The nightmares stopped. The voices stopped. The cravings disappeared. Robbie went on to live a normal life. He changed his name. He got married, became a father, a grandfather. Never again did he have another incident. But the priests, they never gave interviews. And the Vatican, they dismissed the case, confirmed it as being genuine. And years later, this story became the most inspiring book and movie, The Exorcism. But what the movie didn't tell you is that in the dark, behind locked hospital doors, something spoke through a child who had never learned Latin. Something carved words into his skin. Something knew the darkest secrets of strangers. And to this day, no one knows what really was. You just heard a true account of what most people will never believe. But here on Alivinci Podcast Stories, Auto Edition, belief isn't required, experiences. I'm Bella, and these stories aren't just told, they are felt. Because when something ancient touches this world, it leaves an energy behind. If this story stirred or resonates something in you, visit us at alivinci.com to explore intuitive readings, energy healing, and private spiritual guidance. Once again, follow us at alivinci.crystal.land on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Alivinci Crystal Land, for deeper layers of the unknown. And remember, even the darkest spirits fear the light of intuition. Stay grounded, stay protected, my friends, and never ever ignore the whisper.